Good evening. We're here for Testimony Tuesday, and I actually been praying about it, and I decided I was going to share my testimony of how the Lord has changed me. We have done a few things a little different on the post. I think we do have if you have a question during my testimony, something I say, something that happened in my life, or that you have a question, and you can either post it live on here, or you can send a text to that phone number that's posted on the screen on this side, one of these sides. I don't know which side it's on, but anyway, you can send a text to that number and ask your question, and somewhere during this process we will answer a question and see if I can explain myself a little better. I really have not rehearsed this at all, but we're going to see where it goes. I did tell both of my sisters I was going to talk about them, and it wasn't going to be good, but I was telling a story to them because I can't say anything bad about them. So, but I do welcome everyone. If you do have a question, you can text it, you can post it. We will answer any questions. Want to thank everybody for the help yesterday on the food boxes. Thanks for all the prayers. I did have surgery last Wednesday on my elbow, and it's doing better. It's still hurting some, but it is doing better. And thank everybody for their prayers. And but I'm going to start tonight, and really don't know where I'm going to end up, but you know, I do remember. I will start off as a child on how I was raised, and it will kind of tie into some of the obstacles that I had to overcome in my own life. You know, I was raised by my mom and dad, very good people. I was raised in a worldly atmosphere. My mom and dad had a nightclub, you know, owned the bar, the nightclub, most of my life before they passed away. Several years before they even passed away, they got out of it. But I was raised in the nightclub realm. Really, my oldest sister, as a child, she was the one that took care of me most of the time. I'm gonna say 90% of the time. Her and Marlon, and because I get tickled every time I start sharing something with my wife. It all has to do with some kind of car or some kind of motorcycle or something that my brother-in-law had at the time, and she gets tickled because that's the way I keep up with time when something happened, was what kind of car was there, or what was somebody driving, or but I was raised in that scene of you know, nightclub owners, partying, you know, the drinking, some drugs. But being raised in that, you know, I was even thinking that I was probably one of the youngest bootleggers that ever was. I went with my dad back, this was probably back in the early 70s, when he was bootlegging whiskey to all the dry counties. All these counties around here were dry, and so he was bootlegging whiskeys to all the nightclubs and stuff around the area up in Gibson County and Paris and up in that area, and I was probably 4 or 5 years old at that time, and you know, and running that, you know, so I was taught that life very young. And you know, my mom and dad was always about making money, you know, regardless of how it was made, as long as you made it, and didn't get caught doing it. You know, made it through that life. Like I say, 90% of the time I was with my older sister, and she took care of me most of the time, and done a very good job. And she worked all the time, or worked a lot of the time too, but she did have to sacrifice quite a bit to take care of us and other people that's in the family that had to take care of us. But went through that, and as growing up, you know, it was a lot of fighting at the house, a lot of fighting at other friends' house, other family members' houses with people drinking and coming in and just fighting and hollering and cussing. And, you know, it seemed like it was wherever you went, that's what was going on most of the time. And, but going through all of that and jumping into teenage years, you know, it was went through some things at a young teenage age that kind of set me apart from the rest of the people, like through high school. Some of the things that I really don't want to call out anybody's name, but some things that I went through during high school, it kind of set me in a different place than everybody else, because being so young and so I was kind of set apart, not really set aside, but I was looked at different, and you know, from females and that type area. Then going through and becoming a teenager, got into running around quite a bit. Then got married at 18. I'll just jump to my married at 18, young. You know, dated the same girl from the time when I was probably 16. Got married at 18. Good girl. Can't knock anything. I'm not going to say anything bad about her. Didn't work out. We was married for a little over 3 years, and just young. You know, never been anywhere, never done anything, never really grew up, and just kind of went our separate ways. And you know, no hard feelings between us or anything. And so I was back single again, and I started running the bars and all of that stuff. I was factory I was in, and so I started running the nightclubs, started playing the nightclubs, started playing music in the nightclubs, and that was really where I spent my life for several years, is chasing the dream of being something, you know, a star or known for something, you know, going through that part of life. And as we was going through it, you know, spending every weekend in a nightclub somewhere, not knowing, sometimes ending up in places that you wished you hadn't woke up in that place, and just living that life of a musician. I'll put it that way, and going through all of that and working all the time too. I was working at World Color, and you know, and really the World Color had a reputation of probably the biggest divorce factory that was, because it was so much time spent away from home. You know, you spent more time at work than you did at home, so you grew into relationships with other people besides your own family. And I believe that's the reason a lot of the divorce rate was so high in that factory, is because we spent more time there than we did at home with our own family. But after World Color, I remember at one point at World Color, I was playing in a rock band at that time, and I remember a situation that I was in, and I've shared this several times, you know, from the pulpit, but I was in a situation at the time, and I was at work, and I was doing a PM on a machine there. I was doing a maintenance on a machine, and I heard a voice. I mean, it was clear as me sitting here talking to you, and it said basically it said that I needed to go home. I'll put it that way. And you know, and through the circumstances, I did end up getting to leave work, and I got home, and the situations that was there was not right, and had a falling out there with a person, and as we went through it, you know, I'm sitting here thinking the whole time of the goodness of God. I wasn't saved, had never been saved, went to church when I was a child, kicking and screaming, and hated every minute of it. But I knew in that situation of God speaking, and and I'd always remembered, as a child, they always tell you if you get in trouble, pray. And that's a good and a bad thing, but this time it was a good thing, and I did pray, and I was lost. And I prayed and I asked God to show me things, and He did, and that's what kind of woke me up, and it was some things going on, and me out running around town in this situation, and Him telling me places to go. And I pull up there, and there's my answer, and there's an answer going on, of what I was asking. And but going through that whole situation, and then being heartbroken and all of that at the time, and just trying to go on with life, you kind of fall apart a little bit, and you lose part of who you are. But the goodness of God, I never forgot about that. In that whole situation, I remember later on that night when I got back home, I went to the club and stayed there quite a while. But it was in one of them places in life to where you didn't want to be by yourself, but you didn't want anybody around you either. You didn't want to talk to anybody, but you didn't want to be by yourself, but you didn't want nobody around. And so going through that, I remember getting back home, and the house was empty, and so I got home, and I remember praying before I went to sleep that night, and I asked God to help me out of this situation, and the last thing I remembered was a big clap of thunder before I went to sleep, and it was like as soon as that thunder hit, I went to sleep. And the next morning, I was woke up by somebody beating on my front door, and I raised up, and my house is full of water. Of where it had started raining. I guess from that clap of thunder, it had started raining, and it actually flooded my house. And water was actually right up to the edge of my bed, fixing to come over on the mattress. And I stood up in the bed, and I looked out the window. And I'm going to make it through it. And my first thought was, God heard my prayer. And I never forgot that. I never forgot that time that, I was lost. If I'd have died, I'd have busted hell wide open. I was that far gone. But I remembered when I stood up and I looked out, and all I seen was water. And all I could think about was, He heard me. He heard me. And so I kind of step off in the water, and freezing water. I should have been dead, really, because the electricity never was throwed. I had water receptacles was underwater, fan was over trying to run in the water. When I stepped into the water, all the electricity that was there actually should have killed me as soon as I hit the water. But I'd actually walked through the house, and it was my mom that was beating on the front door. And because they had called her and told her my house was flooded, and they couldn't get me up, and didn't know if I was there or what, and the door was locked. And so we went through all of that, and at the same time, through that fluid, I was playing in that rock band, and we actually practiced right outside. And I remember calling Jason, which was the guitar player, and telling Jason that my house had flooded, and he had lost all his equipment, because all of Jason's equipment was there. And Jason was at the time, he was a Christian. He was what I knew as a Christian. And he was a Christian, but kind of not following what God had told him to do. And so I'd called him, and he came over and we went back there and we sat down and I told him everything that happened, you know, how God answered my prayer and how this and he just laughed at me and he said, Rojo, he said, let me tell you what I was praying. He said, I was praying that God would take this away from me if this wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, you know, down to even taking his hand off. And he said, I guess he answered my prayer too. And we went out in the shed and he loaded his equipment up and loaded his equipment up and he carried it home and put it in the shed. And I'll share his testimony real quick and I'll get back on mine. But a few months later, Jackie Fincher actually called Jason and I had told Jason, said, I've been praying, I think you're supposed to come and play guitar for us. You know, and this is the goodness of God here. You know, we had just lost everything that he had in that fluid. And Jason told him, he said, Jackie, he said, I quit. He said, I'm not playing anymore. He said, I lost all my equipment in a fluid. And he said, I'm not playing anymore. And he said, well, pray about it because I think you're supposed to. Well, another week went by and Jason's like, he prays and he says, God, I got to have some equipment if I'm supposed to play. So he goes out there and pulls all that equipment back out of the shed and takes it apart, puts it in his driveway, and takes a water hose and washes out all these electronics. You know, all of these processors, effects, power amps. I mean, they're caked full of mud from the backwater that flooded in there. And he took a water hose and washed it all out. And put it back in, put it all back together, and hooked everything back up. And when he turned it on, it was only one piece in there that didn't work. And I think he ended up playing for the Finchers for, I don't know, 20-something years. I think he ended up playing with them. But just the goodness of God, you know, how he can guide people. You know, did it cost him? Yes, it cost him. You know, did it cost me? Yeah, I mean, it cost me the house I was living in, but you know, we ended up fixing it. And but you see the goodness of God, because even when I wasn't saved, you know, God still listens. You know, God still cares about where you're at. And God cares about who you are and what you're doing. And you know, because even in the time that I was lost and was, you know, not doing what I was supposed to be doing at the time, and you know, but God still had mercy. You know, he was still showing himself to be true, to be real, to, you know, and I never forgot any of that. And sometime later I ended up driving a truck and used to run up to Elizabethtown, Kentucky every night out of Komatsu, and I ended up meeting Debbie in Union City, and we got to talking, and she was kind of a Christian on the run. She had went through some things, and y'all pray, because I'm trying to get Deb on here to share her testimony, and she can share it a lot better than I can. And but she was a Christian on the run from some situation that was going on in her family, and you know, and I was going through this with me, and so we would talk. You know, I'd go through and turn around in Elizabethtown and come back, and when we came back, you know, me and her ended up getting married. You know, we talked to each other several months, and started seeing each other. Me and her got married, and she was a Christian, and I wasn't. You know, I was still. You know, I'd tell her the stories, and she would talk to me about God, and you know, and the thing was she was trying to run from God, and I was kind of looking for God because of the thing that I'd went through. So I had all these questions, and so it's like she was trying to get away, and I was trying to get all these questions answered, but sometime later we ended up getting married, and probably the thing that probably saved my life, just to be honest, is that's probably what really saved my life at the time. Some things that took place before the situation, was some things that took place, and you know, some things that took place in her life. You know, and I was thinking to myself, you know, it was so bad that I thought to myself, if this is what it means to be a Christian, I don't know that I want to be one. through the things that they were going through as a family, them. And as we was going along, we was married. She had 4 boys and Lisa, and like I say, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me was her, getting me on track. And but when we were going through different things in our life, and we got to looking for a church, and I'd started a trucking company and all of that, and so we were doing the trucking, and we found a church, and God had blessed us. He blessed us with a house. He blessed me with a trucking company. I ended up buying the guy out that I was driving the truck for. I ended up buying him out, and so God was blessing. And we got to looking for a church, and we found a church in Dyersburg, and we went to church there several years, and I started getting a moving from God, I guess is what it would be, because I was driving a truck at night, and I would drive from here to Arkansas over in right outside of Texarkana and back every night, Monday through Friday, and that was kind of my prayer closet. That's where I prayed, was in that truck driving down the road, and I can remember coming across there and praying, and it was a friend of ours had started a school in Rhode Island, a Christian college in Rhode Island, and something in me started stirring about going to Rhode Island to go to Bible college, and as I pursued it, the stronger it got, and we were praying and about it, and and I was coming across Arkansas. I'll share this testimony with you. I'll tell you, I'll back up. I'm gonna back up, share a couple of testimonies of God's goodness, and but this was one night I was leaving out, and this is before I'd actually bought this trucking company out, and I was driving for the other guy, and one night I was leaving out, and this is before I got saved. There's another testimony of how good God is, but I was leaving out, and I was coming down Old 51, and there was a sign there for Beech Grove Baptist Church. It was a big sign. We actually built it when I was in high school. I actually helped build the sign, and it was there. And when I was leaving out, that sign was laying on the ground. It's like somebody had hit it, and it fell over on the ground. And I'd asked the Lord. I said, Lord, I said, if you're real, and if I'm supposed to turn my life around, have that sign standing up in the morning when I come back in. Well, this is like 6:30 in the afternoon. I get back in like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, I'm coming back in, and I'm coming down Old 51 right there past South Fork, and the road sign stood right there at not Twin Rivers Road, but whatever that road is, at Bruceville Slab. And I started to turn in on Bruceville Slab, and my headlights hit that sign. And that sign was standing up, and I stopped, and I read that sign. I sat there looking at it, and I was just thinking, wow, God heard my prayer again. And I drove on by, and I gone around, and I pulled in the Beech Grove Baptist Church parking lot and just lose it. I mean, I cried like a baby, because God had heard me, and just how God was doing all of these things to show me how real He was. And the kicker was the next day when I left out, I went by there, and that sign was laying on the ground. So how it was standing up that night I came in, I don't know, but it was standing up when I came back in. And you can say I'm crazy if you want to, it don't matter, because it's my testimony, and I'm telling you what happened. And but I think it was the goodness of God, that He was showing me, that He was drawing me. And but to get back onto the going to college, I prayed about going to Rhode Island to go to Bible college, and my wife was against it because she didn't want to go back to the northeast coast, and I kept feeling that I was supposed to go, and so I kind of put the word out that I was going to sell the trucking company, and we were still going to the church in Dyersburg, and I was coming across Arkansas one night, and and I heard about planting a seed, and it was to the youth pastors that was in the church in Dyersburg. And I didn't say anything, and I guess a couple mornings later, I got home, and Deb was sitting there at the kitchen table, and I was like, "What are you doing up?" And she said, "I think we need to talk." So I sat down there, and she said, "Has the Lord said anything to you?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And that's the first thing I thought of was the Lord told me to sow a seed into our youth pastors at the church at the time. And she said, "You ain't gonna like it." I said, "What is it?" She said, "We're supposed to sow a seed into the youth pastors, give them some money." And I'm just sitting there, because I already know this. I've known it for a day or two, because I'd already heard it. And I said, "How much?" She said, "That's the part you're not going to like," which I already heard what the Lord had told me to give them too. So, and so she said it, and I said, "Okay." I said, "That's what I heard too." And so she called them, and I actually went to their house and carried them what we felt like the Lord said give them, and called them and told them we were coming. So I went over there and went in, and they was there, and I walked in, and and I told them what happened, told them that I kind of sat on it, and then Deb kind of confirmed it, and so here I am, and we sat there and talked for a little bit, and they kind of broke down, and come to find out that they were behind on their utility bills and behind on their rent, and so it got them caught up on their bills, and so it was like a answer from God, and he said he knew that I was trying to sell the trucking company, so at the end there he said, "Well, let me pray for you leave." I said, "Okay." And he prayed for the trucking company to sell and for me to get a 100-fold return on my money. And right when he got done, he said, "And let it be 2 weeks late." And I'm like, "You ain't funny." And so we went on, and I went home, and and I finally determined I'm going to Rhode Island to Bible college regardless. And so I determined that I was going to run the company from Rhode Island and just fly back home every couple of weeks or something. And as we were going, we packed everything up, we left, we got up there, and it was about a week and a half later, the phone rang. And it was a guy, he said, "I heard you were selling your trucking company." I was like, "Yeah." He said, "I want to buy it." He said, "You need to come home." And the first thing I thought was the prayer from the youth pastor was, whenever it sells, let it be 2 weeks late. Well, it was almost right at 2 weeks late after we had done left. I had to turn around and come back home to sell the trucking company. But it still shows you the goodness of God through everything that we do, everything that we can't outgive God. We can't do anything that God don't know about. But it was a blessing, going there. I went through school, I got an associate's degree. We ended up, after we got done, it's like, I want to go to South America, I want to do this, and the only thing I could get out of it was go home. You have the same people in your own backyard. And, and I pray, "Lord, you don't know, everybody there knows me." And that was the only thing I could get was to go home, that he had a work here for me to do. And so we came back home, and I did end up going to South America a couple of times and on missions trips, and I was praying about going to South America, to Peru. And, and I was there, and I was praying, and the only thing I get out of God is you have these same people in your own backyard, go home. And so finally I just kind of come to grips with it, and I was like, okay, so we've been here. And came back, went through a few different things, a few different works, a few different churches, and ended up here at Tabernacle of Praise. And it's been a blessing. The pastor has been a blessing. It was we went from the charismatic world into the conservative world, and back and forth, trying to find balance in our walk with God. And as we went through all of it, and James Street, I run into James Street one day, and they used to do church on Saturday. And he's like, "Won't you come out there and see us on a Saturday night?" So I started going out there on Saturday night, and we ended up starting to go to church there. And I talked to Brother Ron, and we've been here ever since. But it's been a eye opener of seeing God move through our walk, through our journey of everything that we do, how God is in the midst of God's in control of whatever takes place. He's in control of our lives. Once we start walking with God and we surrender to God, He leads us, He guides us, He directs us. Even through the church, through the sale of the other building, and just through the workings of God, and seeing this church being built. Even seeing this church being built, it was amazing. Just the church here, it's paid for, it has no debt, which was a miracle in God's hand. Every time we needed something that was here, God provided it. So it was a blessing the whole time of seeing it being built, and and actually being here. I can't remember how long we've been here, 10 years, 12 years, I can't remember how long we've been here with Brother Ron, but it's kind of been a open door to ministry, open door to this Testimony Tuesday. This actually was all birthed out of a message Brother Ron shared on a Sunday morning, and he was speaking out of Revelation, and he made the statement, reading the verse of they would overcome them by the blood of the Lamb and the words of their testimony. And when he said that, it just hit me. It's like testimonies are powerful, and the workings of God, just the workings of God in our life, of how things go on in our life. I might have said something tonight that you heard that's struck something in you, that's making you wonder, how good is God? And and the thing is God is, if you will let Him, He will lead you through every aspect of your life. I've actually owned Jacob's Lumber and Supply up there for 19 years, 20 years. God has took care of it every month up there. I've never come up short. He's blessed us. And everything that you do, once you surrender it to God, He will move in your life. He will protect you. But the thing is doing it God's way. Being able to walk out what God has called you to do. And when we walk it out, God opens the doors and we just walk through them. And this has been a blessing. This Testimony Tuesday, we get all kind of responses from it, from people that that's come on here and shared, and and it may be somebody out there. You may have a testimony you need to share, that you're walking with God, and people may need to hear your testimony. And that's one thing, that we were all lost at one point in time, and being lost and now walking with God. Somehow or another we got from being lost to walking with God. So it's a road there somewhere that we took, and it was God moving that changed us. And and going back, just looking over my life of people that I've been involved in with with music, with different things in life. You know, and the people that have changed my life, touched my life, you know, the musicians that I've played with over the years, how they've, a lot of them are saved now, and they're playing for the Lord. You know, Jason Powell, the one that was on, I think he was actually my first Testimony Tuesday, and you know, and he's playing on the worship team in Jackson, and at a church there. Shannon Parker, I'm going to try to get Shannon on here in the next few weeks, but Shannon is actually now the worship leader at Assembly of God in Alamo. George Pruitt, played with George many years, and George is actually playing in Ripley at a church. You know, but it's amazing when you look back at all these people that you've been in contact with over the years of playing for the devil, you know, playing for your own pride, playing for your own ego, how God has moved in people's lives and changed them, you know, changed them over a period of time of just, you know, instead of playing and bringing glory to Satan or the flesh or your own desires, you know, actually playing music to bring glory to God. You know, it's not about you anymore. And but how, you know, when I look back and I look, Danny Archer, you know, which was the lead singer of the all original rock band I was in, you know, he's saved, and the keyboard player that played there, you know, just all of the musicians that I've played with in the bars and that scene, and looking back now at how many of them are walking with God, it's amazing. You know, it's amazing to see the change in people's lives. And but I just want to encourage you tonight. You know, if I've said something, I don't know if anybody's asked me any questions yet or not, but ain't nobody asked a question. Somebody asked me a question. I want to answer one question. Yeah, I was reading one of Tracy's comments about when my house flooded. Yeah, but if you have any questions, you can post them real quick, or you can send Clint a text, and I'll answer any question I can. But I do thank you for the time. Thank you for tuning in. I just rambled along there. I've got a bunch of testimonies that I could have went into, but I try not to pull anybody else's names into them, and that makes it a little hard. But I do thank you for tuning in, and if you do have a question after this, something dawns on you, or if you're going through something in your own life and you have a question, you can send me a message, send Clint a message. I will respond to it. But I want to thank you for tuning in, and I do hope that you got something out of it, and that you are blessed. And just remember, you know, walking with God is a life of change. You're going to change regardless. When you get saved, your life is going to change. And because, you know, as Brother Ron always says, if it's not any change, it's not any change. But when you get saved and you start walking with God, your life is going to change. Your desires are going to change. And the thing is we do things to glorify God. It's not to glorify man anymore. It's not to glorify me anymore. It's all to glorify God. So everything that I do, you know, I want God to be glorified in it. And, you know, and that's the thing, even with the testimonies, a lot of times you can share testimonies, and a lot of times it brings glory to Satan. It don't bring glory to God. You know, I could share a bunch of them where I was walking in the world and things was going on and dealing drugs and all of the things that we went through, but you know, bringing the glory back to God was being changed at a time of in this time, you know, being changed in this time. Let's see. I was reading Tammy's post there. Yeah, me and Tammy was pretty close then, and yeah. but it is a good walk. You know, if you're out there, and if you're lost, if you're not saved, and if some one of these testimonies has touched you, you know, through the weeks that we've been doing the testimonies, if they've touched you, and you wonder, you know, could I be free? You know, could I be free from my life that I'm struggling with? The answer is yes. You can be set free. So if it's anybody out there that's lost, that you want to be set free, the Lord Jesus said, "He who the Son has set free is free indeed." And this is all free stuff. You know, that's the thing, is you cannot earn anything. Backing up some, my mom and dad, you know, not that they only owned the bar for most of my life. My mom and dad both got saved. My dad got baptized in this church, or got baptized in this work. It wasn't actually this church, but, you know, so praise God, at 78, 79 years old, my dad did get saved, changed his life, but, you know, but the thing is if you are walking in a place that you're not happy, you're not fulfilled, God can fulfill you. God can fill any desire that you have in your life, and if you in that place and you're kind of on the border there, wondering, can God really use me? Can God really change me? He can. He can, and all it does is it starts with you surrendering yourself to God. You know, when you come to that place of repenting and realizing that you're lost. You know, and that's where I came in my life, was I realized I was lost and God was drawing me. And I had to come to that place of repenting for my own life, for the things that I've done in myself. And, you know, and I had to ask God to forgive me. And when I pray, you know, I pray, Lord, forgive me. You know, I know that you died on the cross to save me. I know that you've opened the doors for my salvation. You know, and we can say these prayers, but we have to really mean them. It has to be a prayer from your heart to God's, and really meaning it, because God will change you. That's the thing, is God will change you. He will set you free, and He will deliver you. And one more testimony, and I'm gonna quit. And this is talking about being delivered, and I'm not knocking anybody for what they're struggling with, because I've probably been there at some point in my life, but you know, one of the testimonies I've got with being delivered was cigarettes. You know, I smoked, and you know, to me that was to me it wasn't that bad of a deal. You know, that was the only thing that I really done, but it came a point to where and I'm not putting anybody up on a pedestal or any of that, but being a leader in the church, this was back years ago when I was in Dyersburg, and being on the platform playing and smoking at the same time, and you know, and it kind of bothered me, you know, being in the front and being used by God, and had you know, and really hurting my own self with nicotine. You know, and you know, and it was one of the things where I went to the pastor about it, and he said, God will take care of it. And I'm like, okay. And we was actually at the Dyer County Fair one night, and we was walking through the fair, and I was trying to smoke a cigarette. Wasn't even thinking anything about it, and it was steadily trying to make, it was constantly, every time I'd take a puff off a cigarette, I'd almost throw up. And I finally threw that cigarette down and stepped on it, and I said, I quit. And I quit. I never picked them back up again. I've never had a desire for one, you know, and I'm just like everybody else that smoked. You know, it was, you know, I would quit for a day, I would quit till the next one, I'd quit for a week, I'd quit for a month and start back. You know, I'm just like everybody else. But the thing was when it came down to it, was God is the one that set me free from it. Now, why does God not work like that with everybody? I don't know. I don't really understand, but I know that's how I got delivered, was God just took it. He took the desire, he took the nicotine. And, but then the thing is in our life, God does things like that. And if you're out there and if you're one of them people, again, I'm going to get back to the salvation part of it, because, the whole thing of a testimony is touching someone's life that's in the place that you were, and they wanting to get to the place that you're at. And it is a journey. It is a day in, day out journey that we walk on. But submission is the first step to walking with God, is submitting to God and God's call in your life. Because God has called all of us. And when we come to that point and we surrender to God and we realize that this life is not about me. This life is not about me and mine and what I want, my desires. It's about God and what He wants, and He will fulfill the desires that you want through what He wants done. It's weird. We live in a kingdom that's backwards, and because God will fulfill what our desires with His plan, and His plan will fulfill us, and and that's the whole thing. Even with the testimony, is someone getting saved, someone asking God, and so I want to leave it there. I want to leave it with a thought of I'm at that place, that if you're at that place, I want you to know that God is there, that God will lift you up. He will shake the dust off of you. He will deliver you. If you're on drugs, if you're struggling with alcohol, if you're struggling with, God will deliver you if you will give it to Him. If you will surrender to Him and follow Him, He will set you free from it. It may be instantly. It may be a process. But the thing is God will deliver you when you start walking with Him. And He will deliver you day in and day out. And so if it's anybody out there that is lost, that's not saved, I want you to surrender. And I want you to say this prayer after me and mean it. And you just have to ask God. You say, Father, forgive me. Father, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I'm not following you. I'm not following your desires. Father, I just ask you that you forgive me for my ways. Father, that you would help me, that you would lead me, that you would guide me, that you would direct me. Father, that you would pick me up and carry me. Father, I surrender to you. I give my life to you, and I ask you that you would lead me, that you would help me, and I repent of my life. And I give my life to you for you to work in. And Father, and I just thank you for it. Thank you that I am forgiven, and I am free, and I am saved. And if you prayed that prayer and you really meant it with your heart, if you really meant it with your heart, and I ain't going to say everything's going to be perfect, and I ain't going to say that all hell ain't going to come against you tomorrow, because it probably will. But if you said that tonight, leave us a comment. Let us know that you have given your life to the Lord, and you're ready to turn your life around. And if you're that person, let us know. Send us a text to that phone number that's on the screen. Post us a message, send us a message, and we're going to pray for you. And if you don't have a church, you're more than welcome here at Tabernacle of Praise. We're at 9879 Highway 51 North in Halls, just out here on the 4-lane. We have service on Wednesday nights at 7, Sunday mornings at 9:45, service at 10:45, and Sunday nights at 5:30. So we would love to have you. If you don't have a home church, if you don't have a place to belong, if you don't have a place to call home, we would love for you to come, join us, become a part, and we just thank you. I thank you for giving me this time, and I thank you for I hope you got something out of it. And may the Lord bless you and lead you and guide you and direct you, and we will see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We will be live on here again tomorrow night, but I would rather you come and be a part of it here. And we will be in service here at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. If you don't have a place to come, we'd love for you to come and join us. And y'all have a blessed evening, and we will see you soon.